Okay, so this is how we go in and do an installer deployment. Installer comes with Duplicator Pro from Snap Creek. It's really an awesome program, and this is how we do one. So in cPanel, we go to our file manager, and we find the place we want to deposit it. So in this case, I'm depositing the installer files here. So I'm going to upload two relevant files. In this case, I'm going to upload this one and this one. So installer is the name of the file used to get at the data and turn it into a useful site. And this much larger file is the payload. And they can range anywhere from like 5 megs up to like 10 gigs. It's really everything in between. So while that's happening, and sometimes these are pretty fast, but sometimes it's a long period. If you come in here and reload, you'll see these are there. So if you went to Demo 5 election websites, you wouldn't see anything because you'd have to go to this particular file. So next thing you have to do is figure out a data source. So inside of here, let's zip a couple of these up so it's easier to get at what we want to see. So MySQL Database Wizard. So we're going to call this one, in this case, Demo 5. Username and database name usually aren't super secure, precious things. So sometimes I will name them in common. Um, you know, security through obscurity is always a good thing. So try to make sure your passwords and everything are as hard to guess as possible. The longer the better. So I'm going to use this password. Whatever password I use, I probably will be changing pretty liberally, pretty quick. Going to make sure a couple of these more problematic settings are turned off. So now we have a database and we have the demo. So I'm just going to keep a crib sheet around of settings. The name of your data source. So you have your username, your database name, and the current password. And now we go and open up a new window, and we're going to call it demo5.electionwebsites.ca. And there's nothing there according to that. But what we do is we go into the cPanel, fetch this file name. Hackers like to guess that installer.php is there, so they will be actively crawling domains looking for that as a backdoor. So always make sure your domain name is a little bit obscure, your installer name is obscured, or you hop on it pretty quickly. And the other solution is the one built into Duplicator, which we'll see in a second, which is simply a password. Every installer profile, you can set up a password on the way out and then just use it as it comes in. Here it is here. This is mine. So I just put in that password. So this runs through what you're supposed to do. Install a single site. Yes, please. Database, username, and password. This came from another profile. So what I'm going to do here is grab that username, which is also the database name, and password, like so. And then extract over current files. Yes, it's all empty, so that's fine. It'll go through and do a validation check to see if all is well. Validate and let it do it. Database version, this is not uncommon as you're hopping from one system to the other, where they have different database engines. Maria, Percona, some of them may report as MySQL. So usually that's going to be okay. Terms and conditions, basically, if this sets your server on fire, nobody's going to have a problem. Summary of what's doing. And then we say, yes, we're overwriting the database. If you are, so make sure you always spin up a new database associated website, or consciously understand that Maybe you're installing over something's already there, in which case you still want a new database, so that way your old data could be preserved and accessible if you really need it. Run the install. Large sites, reflects your size and the performance of your server. So a large site will take a very long time to install the archive. A small site could be as little as like a minute or two. Now we're just going to let that chug away and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so I just stopped the clock running because really, who wants to watch the paint dry of an archive extracting? So we came back about 5 minutes later and it's marched its way up to about 90%, so it's pretty close. It always says keep this window open, and by all means, yeah, but some people have tabitis like me. You can put a lot of, you can keep this rolling while you're doing something else. So, and it does move pretty fast, so it's not the worst thing. And besides, you got to stay here because seeing the spinning thing is really the most entertaining thing on the internet at the moment. I challenge you to find something more entertaining than this spinning circle thing. Okay, that's not very interesting. I'm going to go away and I'll be back in a bit. All right, so it got to 100% and it does WordPress and some cleanup tests. Gives you the notices here. Notice of a couple things just to pay attention to. Otherwise, it looks like things are good. So when you click on one of these, well, down here is what it says. Warnings and notices from end tests. So undefined index, that's just PHP being a little bit picky. Likewise, you can see the same errors, the same places, so that's what we're encountering. Otherwise, it does a summary of databases and what it scanned, how many rows, how many cells. So, yeah, this will sort of give you a sense. Like a small site will look like this. A bigger site will have a lot more going on. And then the last step is the admin login. This takes you to the site where it completes the cleanup and deletes installer files. What it also does is it's a total copy of the site you started from. So whatever your credentials were on the other site will work on this one. If you come here, and because I have to find it, I'm going to grab the username from the pre-existing site and the password from the pre-existing site. Log in, and there we go. So it runs through and does the removal. Everything here is a complete duplicate of the starting point. Not today. And it gives you a summary of what else is going on inside of Duplicator. Ironically, it also brings over Duplicator as part of the Duplicator, so you can now spawn copies of Duplicator from the Duplicator, unless Duplicator, when you encounter it, is kind of cleaned up after the fact. But there we go. That's kind of what we do to use Duplicator Pro from Snap Creek to install a website from a profile into a new space.